Are you promoting your book? Well, chances are pretty likely you might not be doing so well in some regard, and that's how you're asking your audience to buy your book or entice them. Better way to put it is, are you copywriting? Now, not to be confused with rights or copyrights. We're talking about copywriting today. So, what is copywriting and how to do it? We're going to discuss that in today's episode, so make sure you stay tuned. What's happening? It's Dale here, and I'm just tickled to death you took a little bit of time out your day to spend a little bit of time with me to talk about my favorite topic in self-publishing, and I'm just beyond excited about today's guest who's going to be sharing some of her expert insights in copywriting and how it can really help you start to really grow your self-publishing business. I want to say first of all that today's broadcast is exclusively sponsored by the fine folks over at Pro Writing Aid. Get your hands on the premium grammar checking tool. It's my preferred thing. You can get free access or get 20% off premium access when you go over to dalelinks.com/prowritingaid. There's a link down inside the description down below, folks. Today's guest actually has been a longtime follower here of this channel, and it was funny, about a few months ago, she gets a hold of me and she's like, hey, you need me as a guest. And I'm like, I do, actually. It's so funny. Sarah Townsend has spent 20 plus years as a freelance marketing copywriter. In Survival Skills for Freelancers, her book, she shares strategies for tackling the inevitable ups and downs of self-employment. Recognize that one, folks? From isolation and imposter syndrome to knowing what to charge and when to say no. The Amazon #1 bestseller, makes you guys stand up at attention when you hear that, as seen in Forbes, has been described as absolute gold, a pocket business coach, warm wisdom, and an instant gem, and is available in paperback and Kindle formats. That is Survival Skills for Freelancers, and today's guest is Sarah Townsend. Welcome to the show, Sarah. It's great to have you finally.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks, Dale. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've been working on it. You know, it was so funny. Like
Yep.
there's some people that I get a lot of people that will approach me to do interviews, and you're an interesting type of person where I'm like, I have to have you on. There's a certain energy about you that I'm like, I know we're going to get along really well.
Yeah, for sure.
But so I want to go ahead and before we start to do the battery of questions here, I want to, of course, just address the live chat. Live viewers, if you've got questions about copywriting, again, this is not about rights holding, but actual copywriting, all right? Ad copy, if you will. Please load them up over inside the chat. Same thing goes for the replay viewers. Drop them inside the comments, and we'll do our best to answer those. In the meantime, I hope that you indulge my questions here, Sarah. So if you're ready, the very first one, this is simple. What is copywriting?
Okay, so copywriting is writing to sell, basically, in the short way of describing it. It's writing to persuade people to think differently or to change minds, to raise awareness of products, and ultimately to get them to take action as a result of reading your words. So whether that's booking a course, watching a video, buying a book, it's being persuasive.
Okay, so is copywriting easy to do and learn? Because I see you've had over 20 years of doing this, so
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's simple?
Well, it's simple for me because I've been doing it for a really long time. I would say there is a misconception that copywriting is simple because everybody can write. So people think, okay, yeah, well, great, I don't need to hire a copywriter. So say, for example, you're having a new website built. You would naturally probably not do that yourself. You'd probably go to a web designer and then you'd probably get a developer to build it properly, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual words that fill the pages on the website, you might think, well, I can write. I'm going to be writing this myself. So this is where people come into difficulty because they think writing and copywriting are the same. And there are kind of subtle differences. And obviously, if you're writing for the web, there's the Google beast to satisfy. So SEO issues have to be taken into consideration. And actually writing marketing copy to sell is actually quite different.
Okay, so what do you think is the biggest problem? What do you think is the biggest hurdle that people have to overcome in actually getting good at copywriting?
I would say one of the things that people do wrong the most, and I guess this is kind of a roundabout way of answering that question, is that you think you might have an understanding that copywriting is writing to sell, but you might think, okay, so what are all the good things I can say about my book or my car or my project? And you might kind of focus on the features of the product. So, this TV is LED. This was a really bad example because I don't know anything about TV. But this computer has an Intel processor. Okay, well, I don't care if it's got an Intel processor because I don't know what that means. So what does that mean to me as a customer? So it's all about getting very curious about your audience's needs. The problems that they're facing and the things that your product or your service, or in your audience's case, your book, what sort of problem does that solve for them? What sort of information is it going to give them? And it's also really important to use your audience's language, rather than if you've got a very technical product, but you're selling it to an audience of non-technical people. It's all the more important to really get under the skin of your audience and really think about, okay, so that Intel processor means my computer's going to be really fast. Maybe it means it's reliable as well, all those things that actually, what does it mean to your customer and your audience? And that's really where a lot of people make mistakes when they're writing their own copy.
Okay, good insights. All right, so let's take the next best step here and talk about what are some of the critical elements to even basic copywriting?
Yeah, kind of going back to the previous answer, I guess, a real good, solid understanding of where your customer is and what sort of problems they're facing, what sort of needs they have, and what language they use. So there's this really great quote from Nelson Mandela that I use a lot. It says, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. But if you talk to a man in his language, that goes to his heart. And we all know that like buying decisions are made on emotion, not necessarily rational kind of features, etc.
Yeah.
So if you can trigger an emotional response in your reader, you've got a far better chance of selling your product. Does that help?
Yeah. How can we really know if the copy is actually working?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess if you write copy and you don't get any inquiries or any bookings or any sales, then that's a fairly clear sign that it's not working. It could be a good idea to find an audience. So say, for example, with your book, you have your ARC team. You could have almost like a team that you could even use your ARC team for this, right?
Yeah.
You could perhaps run your promotional copy for your book. So say you were writing a book description for Amazon and you put something together and you kind of go, okay, look, guys, this is a little bit above and beyond your remit, but how do you feel when you read this? Does this sound like it resonates with you? Does this trigger the right kind of emotions? Does this satisfy the right issues that you're dealing with? And if not, what kind of language would you suggest? And where do you think I'm going wrong? So I would say don't be afraid to ask for feedback, because unless you're not getting a response, and you really don't want to let it get to that stage, you don't want to kind of go, oh, hey, 6 months down the line, your website's been out there, your book landing page or whatever, and it's kind of tumbleweed. You're not getting any response, you're not getting any feedback at all. So don't let it get to that stage. Be kind of asking people for feedback who are your audience, and kind of learn from that and adapt. I think test and measure is a really important thing.
Oh, okay. So it's probably a good thing that we need to be proactive about. So even before we say launch our book, maybe we have a separate ARC team, or even our current ARC team, that would say review and give us feedback on that copy.
Yeah. I think that's a really good idea, because I mean, something certainly that I did with my book was I had a landing page built pretty much as soon as I got the idea, because I wanted to get buy-in from other people that I wanted to support me in the process. And just sending them a Word document with some ideas in just wasn't really cutting it. So to pay a designer to build me a landing page for the book and to get the cover design nailed was really important. It was important for my motivation, but that's going off, that's a whole other talk, isn't it? You know, when you've got the book design there and you kind of know it's real then, but having a landing page just kind of made it feel more professional and more committed from my perspective. So I could just send out emails with so much more confidence in my end result because I was like, hey, you know, check out this landing page. And it had kind of early quotes, what people were saying about the blog post that informed the book, you know, that kind of inspired me to write it.
Yeah.
And it had the kind of the empathy building copy. So saying, oh, you know, freelance life can be great. And we know the benefits of self-employment. We know we love the freedom and the flexibility and the chance to work where you like, when you like, how you like. But it can also be really tough. So it's that kind of empathy piece at the start that hooks in your readers so they can kind of go, oh yeah, you know, this person gets me. I think that's really important.
I got a question here. It is a loaded one. I know this is off script and such. What if I hire, say, you, or I hire a professional copywriter of some sort, or one of the freelancers that you help train? They do the copywriting. They put the stuff together. I go ahead and make payment and such. Then I put this through, let's say, a panel of folks. And some people give some feedback that it needs some tweaking. How do I approach that situation? Do I go back to the freelancer and go, well, your copywriting's trash? Or what's the best approach? That way I don't have my copywriter killing me or putting out, you know, a hit on my head.
Yeah, that's a real tricky one, but it's dead important if you do decide to hire a professional copywriter, make sure that they've set the terms out for you from day one. So I personally include one set of changes. If I've written copy, the client then has up to 2 weeks to come back to talk to their team if they need to, or just to kind of mull it over and to come back with one definitive set of changes. And then I'll work on those changes, and then that will all be included in the initial cost, because I charge a fee for a job rather than, I don't charge by the hour. Because if you get into working with a copywriter who charges by the hour, they might sound cheaper, but actually you've got no way really of knowing how much that job is going to end up costing you, because there's no end to it. It's like, how long is a piece of string? So I would say make sure that you're really clear on exactly what the rate you're paying includes. So if your copywriter says, okay, I'm going to charge you £1,000 for this, but you can come back with 2 sets of changes, that's fine. I mean, ultimately, if you've given the right brief, and that's a lot down to the copywriter, they should be asking the killer questions that enable them to get to the root of your book or your brand or your product or your service. And if they're asking the right questions, the copy that they supply you, the first draft should be bang on. There might be like tweaks and, oh, I'd like a little bit more copy about this section here. And actually we've scrapped this product so we can ditch this here, or I've let this chapter go, you know, so there'll be tweaks. But generally speaking, if you've given the copywriter a really good quality brief, they should provide something that's pretty much spot on.
Okay. So sometimes it comes down to good copy starts with the person who's requesting for that. So I need to make sure that I have X, Y, and Z in place so they understand all the moving parts before they write compelling ad copy.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, it's not really your position to kind of go, oh, hey, you know, Mr. or Ms. Copywriter, here's the information that you need. The onus is really on the copywriter to ask you for what they need to do their job properly. So for example, if I have a discovery call with somebody, I'll then go away and provide them with a quote, with a proposal. If they like the idea of working with me, I'll bill them 50% deposit up front. And then I send them my briefing form, which is 4 pages, PDF, interactive, asking all the right questions. And provided they answer, you know, they properly take the time to kind of think about who is your audience, what pains are you solving for them, what benefits do they get out of buying your product or service or book. As long as the thought has gone into that briefing process and they have gone back to you to clarify any points that they're not clear about, then yeah, you should be good to go.
I love how this direction this conversation's going here. So it's a perfect segue. We go over into when's the best time to hire out a professional copywriter? Because I know that for me, I've tried, and all my ad copy is just absolute garbage, and I just don't want to learn the process. So when is going to be a good time for most folks to hire out a professional copywriter?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I would say if most people who are watching this chat, if you're self-employed, you are your own business, right? So ideally you went so you became self-employed to become your own boss because you have something that you love doing, in your case writing books. That's the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, right? That's the thing you love doing, fires you up, keeps you inspired, keeps you energized. If you don't like writing copy, it's no different to if you don't like doing your own accounts, if you don't like doing your own admin or your own social media. You need to outsource, because if you're running your own business and you are your own personal brand, or if you like that phrase, great. But if you're spending your precious time doing work that you don't enjoy, you're not good at, and it doesn't make you money, it's more profitable to outsource. Because don't forget, the person that you're outsourcing to is someone who does that thing, copywriting, proofreading, accounts, admin, whatever it may be. They're doing that thing day in, day out. So it might take you 10 hours to write a book description for Amazon, but it might take a copywriter 2 hours. So you're thinking, okay, so I'm in business to make money for myself. Why do I want to be paying somebody else? But I think that is the logic behind it.
Yeah.
You're getting a specialist. So it's like you're kind of surrounding. I went through 10 or 12 years, total truth, with no support whatsoever. I was a single mum for 12 years, still am, but for 12 years of running my own business. And I was trying to do all the juggling. And I've always had this like real control freak, fundamental inability to ask for help. So I just wouldn't do it. And I would think, oh, no, I can't ask somebody else because they won't do it my way. And I knew my way wasn't always the best way. But ultimately, if you can get an expert in your sort of success circle, they're all working for you. So get like an IT specialist and an accountant and a proofreader or a graphic designer. Those people are all on your team. They're all kind of rooting for the success of your business. And best of all, they're freeing you up the headspace and the time to focus on the thing that you love doing.
Yeah. Isn't that what it's all about, right? Yeah. So it's so tough. And I'm so glad. I feel like we can clip this and put it on social media and share it to other people, because yes, hire out to the pros. Okay. So now let's assume you've sold me. I want to go hire a copywriter. How do I find a qualified copywriter, and how do we know if they're any good?
Yeah, that's a good one, because for starters, I question the use of qualified, because I'm not a copywriter because I took a course. I think anybody at any stage in any career, you could be a lawyer and you could decide to retrain as a copywriter. You could do a course and say, I'm a qualified copywriter. I actually think experience is a far better qualifier, but then I would say that, wouldn't I? I've been doing it for 20 odd years.
Right. I'd hope you're good at this point.
So I would say start with a good old fashioned Google search. If you want to work with somebody that's local to where you're based, use that on your Google search. You'll just get a feel from their website. You really, truly will. Do they sound like a human being? Do they sound like they're somebody that you would want to work with? Because what I quite often say when I'm talking about freelance life in chats like these is you don't necessarily have to be the best at what you do, but you do have to be likable. You have to be somebody that makes life easy for your clients. Yeah, you have to be reliable. You have to get the job done on time and in budget. But more than that, you have to be someone that people kind of go, oh, yeah, I loved working with Sarah. She made the job, she made my life so much easier, and she's fun to work with. So do a bit of research online. Maybe do a narrowing down to kind of 3 or 4 copywriters, send out an initial email or book a discovery call if that's on their website, and talk to them. So even I always say, if you're just talking to somebody for say 10 minutes and you get a Zoom call with them, you just get enough of a feeling as to whether their energy is the right match, the values are the same, do they feel like someone who knows their stuff? Do they talk confidently about what they do day in, day out, and about how what they do can help your business and your personal brand? Are they somebody who kind of convinces you? And then obviously ask for examples of their work. If you don't feel convinced by that conversation and by the research that you've done online, ask for examples. Any good copywriter will be happy to give you examples or to direct you to websites they've written for other clients or whatever. So, yeah.
Brilliant. I love it. All right. So, folks, she is a self-published author. That means she's put out a book. It's been successful on the Amazon Marketplace. So I'm going to ask her a loaded question. She knew this was coming out here pretty soon. Yes, I'll hold that up again. Survival Skills for Freelancers, folks. Get your hands on a copy. There is a link in the description, and as well, you can actually, right below her head there, survivalskillsforfreelancers.com. You can take a look at that book. But what role did copywriting play in the production of your book, Survival Skills for Freelancers?
Yeah, and before we came on live, I was saying that's actually a question nobody's asked me before, and I'm kind of like, it stumped me for a little bit because obviously writing a book is not the same as copywriting. It's far more of a conversational, informative. But I have to say, I've got one review that even now I think about it, it gives me goosebumps. It was actually from another copywriter who wrote the book, who read the book and left me a 5-star review. And he said, this book is so refreshing to read. It's so refreshing to read a book that's written by a proper copywriter who knows how to get the message from the page to the brain with the least resistance. And I thought, I just love that. I've literally got goosebumps right now. And he said it's just so goddamn intuitive to read. So I think there is an element of, the writing process for me, the stuff, hallelujah to you, Dale, because honestly, I knew nothing about KDP and self-publishing before I found your channel. So yeah, great, amazing. But the actual writing process and the editing was the easy bit for me. So in terms of copywriting, I guess the book itself, it's written in a different kind of way, but obviously there are a lot of lessons that I can take from copywriting in terms of just, I like simple language. I'm all about conversational language, using words that real people really use, and not kind of going, oh, hey, I'm going to make myself sound more intelligent than you, because for starters, I don't think I am. I'm not academic. I'm kind of basically qualified by experience. So I wanted to write a book that everybody who read it could really relate to, and really felt like, my God, this feels like a chat with a friend, or a trusted business coach, or, I've had such lovely comments along those lines. In terms of the copywriting, I guess that kind of relates to things like writing the landing page, and the things like the emails, just getting people to buy in on the process, kind of, can I quote you in my book, and that sort of thing. Being persuasive in language is such a good skill to have. And then of course the all important Amazon description.
Yeah.
I've tweaked that a million times. Yeah.
And what do you suppose it would require so much more work to do the book description? Do you always have to tweak your work a million times, or do you think it's because it was more personal to you?
Yeah, it's totally the latter. Yeah, I think I am naturally a perfectionist control freak, as I kind of alluded at earlier on. And I think the hardest part for me about producing the book was really knowing where to stop tinkering. Like having to draw a line under it and go, it's good enough.
Yeah.
It's good enough. Let it go. Let it go off to be typeset or whatever it is, digital formatting, whatever you call it. So I tend to tinker because I always think I can do better with my own stuff. But I just had to accept that I need to put things out there into the world and trust the process. Nice. And it's done pretty well by me so far, because in like 6 months, it's got 220 odd 5-star reviews here in the UK.
Hang on a second. Did you just say 220 reviews. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I do.
This is completely off the script and such. How did you get so many stinking reviews?
Okay, it comes down to one thing.
Okay.
Beg, steal, or borrow. I have just asked people. I've just had to be shameless. So because it's so important in terms of the visibility, as we all know, and also just that kind of social proof. Because I always say I can say what I like about my book. I know what I set out to write, but it's actually what other people say about it. That's what really counts.
Right.
And some of the reviews, they just go into so much detail about the things people loved. And someone literally said, I've had a lot of comments about it being unputdownable, which for me is just insane because it's a business book. I've never read an unputdownable business book in my life.
Right. Yeah. Usually pretty dry.
Yeah, exactly. But somebody left the most gorgeous review the other day and said, I love this book so much, I didn't want it to end. So, I just thought that was fantastic. But yeah, the way I've got them, I think this was actually a Dave Chesson tip about putting a thing in the back saying, now you've finished reading, please go online and leave a review, because it really does mean the world to me. And that definitely has helped. But certainly if somebody messages me through social media and says, oh, I just got myself a copy of your book, I'm loving it, I will always leave, if it's Instagram or LinkedIn, I leave a voice note. So it's even more personal. I can't do that on Twitter. That disappoints me. Twitter disappoints me in a lot of ways. But
many people too.
A voice note and I just say, I'm so pleased to hear that you've got a copy. So glad you're enjoying it. Do keep in touch, because I'd love to know what are your biggest kind of learning points and what's your favorite myth that I bust. And by the way, it would really mean the world to me if you take the time to leave an Amazon review when you're done, because it really helps me spread the word and reach and support more freelancers and small business people. So it is a little bit shameless, but it's kind of, I put my heart and soul into this book, and I obviously want to help as many people as possible with the advice it contains.
Nice. Good stuff. All right. That was completely off script. I totally understand. We are not going to disconnect here right now, folks. We're going to go to the live question and answer. And those that are watching on replay, please make sure you stick around to the very end, because we might have some loaded questions. My last question for myself here before we move on is, how can viewers get in touch with you?
Oh, that's a good one. I think the easiest way is to go to the landing page that I talked about, which is survivalskillsforfreelancers.com. That has a link to buying the book on Amazon, so you can read more and you can read those amazing reviews. It also links to my copywriting website, and it links to my social media. So I am most active on Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram. But if you do connect with me, please do feel free to connect. I'd love to hear from you. But do just say that you found me through Dale, because that will be fab.
Awesome. Very good. For some reason, my camera just decided to die on me here. So hang in there, folks. For whatever reason, my camera just decided it's going to stop. So there we go. Yeah, don't be surprised. You're probably going to get some people reaching out to you about the reviews, because 220, when did you publish your book?
The 18th of June, 2020.
Wow.
This time last year, I hadn't even had the idea to write a book. But as I say, that's a whole different conversation, maybe for another day.
Yeah, for sure. So here's what we're going to do is let's go to the live question and answer. For some reason, my camera dies. Know that I'm still here, Sarah. All right, so let me scroll on through. It's great to see everybody joining us here today. SL Michaels. Hey, Samantha, what's going on? Angst Taz, great to see you. And Japonese, con Rafi. Rafi, hey, how's it going, buddy? Good to see you, man. Mikey Argentina, Kevin McGuire, Thomas A. Bradley. Okay, so let's see if we can do this. Okay, so Stefano, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to stay on track here for copywriting questions. Any other questions, we're going to try to keep them dialed in. Angstaz says this, it was funny when you brought up the Intel thing. Telling me it's an Intel processor tells me that you want me to pay for a brand name rather than performance. Nobody wants an Intel 386 in this day and age.
Sorry, I told you it was a bad example.
I think she was more chiming in with kind of agreeing with what you were kind of saying, where it's like, you're talking about Intel, tell me what I'm going to do for performance.
Oh, yeah, got you. Yeah, yeah.
Sauce adds in, by the way, what's going on, Sauce? Great to see you join us here. How to know what customers want to see most. I love how everybody's kind of getting some of these good tips. Wayne Blinko, sorry I'm late. We're glad you're here, buddy. John Keeler, copywriting's a rough gig. Can you be able to share a little bit more insights on that? Any horror stories at all, Sarah?
God, I'd really have to kind of dig back in the archives for the horror stories. I've kind of got to the stage where I turn down a lot of work because I'm kind of busier than I should be. And I like helping out other freelancers by kind of spreading the load. So I find I've got very tuned in to the red flags and the warning signs of somebody that's going to be a really bad client. So I'm lucky enough to say in the past few years, it's been plain sailing. I've worked with lovely people. And I have to say, provided I have the right source information and I've asked the right questions to begin with, I just love it. I can't say it's a rough gig because it's what I do day in, day out. And I really love it. I'm lucky.
After about 2 decades, I think, you're here to stay.
Yeah.
Let's go move on here. A few other things. Andy W., what's going on, Andy? Walter Wyburn, what is happening? Big YouTube star Walter popping on in here. And I'm not being facetious. He really is, actually. This guy's getting ready to hit 100,000 subscribers on his channel. So great to see you join us today, Walter. Andy W., though, says, not too bad. Learning lots about copywriting on this master class. See, you're dropping some 411. And you didn't even know we were going to do that today. You were just like, I'm just here for the party here. Angstas goes ahead and says, if we're here for the and how to do part of the title hook rather than how to hire somebody, how important is it? How important is the ask for the sale element in a book description, for example?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess every piece of copy should have a call to action. That's kind of a fundamental thing. So you want to tell your reader what you want them to do when they've got to the end of what you've written. And ideally, I guess that is buy the book. But if your copy has done a good enough job, you won't need to tell them to buy the book. They'll be reading it. They'll be like, where's the link? Take me to the link.
Yeah.
How do I pay? So yeah, I would say always include a call to action of some sort. So whether that's, hey, click this link to book, or to sign up for this event, or to subscribe to my newsletter, whatever it is, make sure. But as long as your message is doing a good and clear job and it's compelling enough and it's talking to your customer in their language, then you shouldn't need to worry too much about it. It should have kind of done the sales job for you.
Nice. She actually expanded just a little bit more. The direct buy this now because it's the best feels sleazy and rapport breaking to me. So I'd rather avoid it when I can. So you gave some really great tips.
I totally get that. I'm like that. I couldn't be less of a hard salesperson at all, which is why it makes me feel slightly cringe every time I even have to ask somebody for a review. But I think kind of make it authentic to who you are and the kind of language you would use. If that buy this now, this is the best, the all-time great, the world's fastest, best, whatever, shiniest. If that doesn't feel comfortable to you, don't use that language. Use kind of your version of that language.
Yeah, but I'm sensing that there's no exact way to doing copywriting, that it's going to vary from one person to the next. Am I wrong in saying that?
I would say there are certainly processes in terms of the structure and the way we get what I would call source material. So all the information we've been given by the client, the way we kind of shape that. I always think of it as a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. I always quite like it if a client says, for example, oh, I've got this website and this website's really not working for me, but it really needs an overhaul. I love that when I'm kind of looking through the copy that they've got at the moment, I'm kind of like, wow, this is duplicated. They don't need this bit. This they need to expand on. And that's kind of a process. But in terms of the voice that you use, that is as personal to you and to your brand as anything. So it's your copy across all the touch points, don't like that word, but can't really avoid it. Everywhere your customers see you. So if you're an author, so on Amazon, on your website, on your LinkedIn profile, on your social media bios, it should sound the same. It should sound like you everywhere you are. So that's the bit that's different, I think.
Okay, good point here. Oh, by the way, Angstaz says, thank you for accurately reframing my Intel comment. Hey, no problem. Andy W says, those review numbers are crazy good, elbow cough. And I'm loving this class, Walter Wyburn said. Okay, so Ray R. Wise asks this. Now, I'm not sure if you've got any insights on this one, but I'm going to ask you anyways. Do you think it's harder to get reviews for fiction writers or nonfiction writers?
Ooh, I guess with fiction writers, I don't know because I haven't given this any thought because I didn't know this was going to crop up. But my instinct is, so for me, I probably read 5 fiction books to every nonfiction. So I guess the fiction books maybe float. I'm really sorry to any fiction writers out there who are listening to this, but I guess the fiction books kind of flow into one another more. And if I don't feel that connection, it's difficult for the author because the author isn't making a personal connection with the reader. They're providing their story as characters. So by the time you get to the end of the book, the author might only have like 2 pages of acknowledgements in which they can make a connection with. So I think what I'm saying is, yes, I suspect it's harder as a fiction writer to get reviews because you're not having, look, I've got 220 pages in which to make a connection with my audience. So by the time they get to the end and I say, do you know what, if you could do one thing for me now, it would be, can you leave a review on Amazon? But I'd really love it if you would. They feel like they know me. I have had so many comments saying, I really felt like I was just having a conversation. This book feels like a conversation. Like, and I love that because that's given me 220 pages of being persuasive for people to trust me and to want to do something to help me in return. So I would say yes.
Nice. Good stuff.
Long answer.
They're loading us up with a ton more questions here. And folks, we're going to wrap up here in the next 5 minutes here. Andy W. wants to know, how do we get started with practicing copywriting? Do we go for an hour a day, 15 minutes? Any ideas how to get practicing?
Yeah, I mean, practice, perhaps set yourself some test projects. You know, if you see something that you see a brand, you think, oh, you know, I could have done better than that. If you see a piece of advertising or advertorial in a magazine, just kind of say, well, okay, so say I had been briefed with this challenge. Obviously, you don't have the same amount of background information, but kind of practice in a way that fits in with your day-to-day life. If you set yourself too lofty a goal, chances are you won't achieve it. The first day you forget to do it for an hour, you're going to feel down on yourself. And if you can just carry on, even if you just do, say, 15 minutes a day. But also one thing that's really important in learning to copyright is reading, like read everything you can get your hands on and kind of absorb different writing styles, different voices, different methods, and that sort of thing. Does that help?
Nice. I like that. Angstaz comes back with another question. You mentioned social media professionals. Is everything we post on a professional social media basically copywriting?
There's a subtle difference. That's actually content writing. I do both because when I started out, there was no, this is going to make me feel really old. There was no internet. Well, very little internet. I came from an agency background and we had 20 computers in our editorial side and 20 computers in our design side and 1 computer in the entire agency office that had the World Wide Web on it. When I started, there was no social media. So content writing, some people say I just do copywriting. Some people say I just do content writing, which is more relationship building rather than selling copy, but I do both. It's a subtle difference.
Nice. All right. One last question here as we start to wrap things up. Okay. So you kind of touched on this, but I'm going to ask this one anyways. Content marketing is distinct from copywriting then?
Yeah, it is. You will find people who call themselves copywriters who will do both. From my perspective, I don't do social media posts, but I do pretty much everything else. So if a client comes to me for website copy, the ideal is that they'll like what I do so much that then we'll end up kind of working together on other projects. And some of those projects might be content. But yeah, you can kind of find people who will argue the toss about that. I don't think it's really that much of an important distinction, but there are content writers out there who would disagree with me. I know this.
Right. Well, you're the expert and you're the one who's on today. So we'll just let them go ahead and disagree. If they want to, they can also drop it inside the comments. Folks, become part of the thumbs up brigade. Hit that thumbs up. It would definitely appreciate it. And of course, you want to join the channel memberships, click the join down there and find all the details that you need to. Sarah, thank you so much for taking some time out your day. I really do appreciate it.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And thanks for everybody who's joined in to watch.
Fantastic. All right, so folks, let's not let it end here. You can actually go over to the very next video here. It's actually in the pinned comment where we actually talk about writing book descriptions that sell. You want to go ahead and click that one. I also have inside the description down below, or you can take a look at this other one here, YouTube.